Welcome to the Picky Bastards podcast, where three people who know very little about music try to be the best at being not very good at reviewing some. Hello to Fran.
Wow. Hi. I don't know what you just said, but yeah.
Hello to Matt in New York.
Does that mean we're trying to be good or we're trying to be bad?
We are trying to be good, and we're not succeeding. That was my basic point.
There's too many double negatives.
I'm sorry.
I'd like to say that I am succeeding.
My brain can't cope.
We'll see if we're succeeding in an hour, won't we?
No, you're not succeeding. But
all right, fair enough. I'll accept that.
Cool.
So, welcome to everyone. I'm doing all right. Well, I say that. I'm massively hungover, actually, because it was my wife's birthday last night. So I feel like absolute death. And I may expire on the actual recording, which would be quite interesting to get a recording of one of the Picky Bastards' deaths.
Yeah.
We'll see how it goes. All right, so today we will be discussing 5 new albums. And also, what am I talking about? I will be introducing one artist I love. So the albums today are Lana Del Ray, Norman fucking Rockwell, Futurehead with Powers, The Murder Capital, When I Have Fears, Rapsody with Eve, the classic is Bruce Springsteen's Darkness on the Edge of Town, and I will be introducing FKA Twigs' EP Melissa. So we'll get started by me asking a couple of questions. First one is for Matt. Which album from this list seemed to be the longest listen?
For me, the longest listen was the Futureheads with Powers. And there's kind of a specific reason for it. Okay. I didn't dig this album at all. I really like the Futureheads, and so every time I listened to this, it felt like an age, because I was really unimpressed with the album as a whole. I think if anyone's like familiar with the Futureheads, they kind of built their brand on like these really like catchy like earworm riffs, and then like a cacophony of backing vocals and vocal interplay.
Okay. Have they got a lot of stuff? I actually don't know anything before this. Have they got a lot of albums?
A long time, yeah.
They've been going, like, they were part of the like indie heyday of the early 2000s.
Okay.
And I think they were doing it before it started to take a downturn and became a bit throwaway. They had their own unique brand of that kind of indie pop.
Okay.
And I think they're just not doing their brand as well in this album. It just all feels a bit more throwaway. It feels a bit more grown up, but in a not interesting way.
But it's their first album in 7 years, so if it wasn't a bit more grown up, you'd be a bit...
Well,
Sounds like he's going to defend them. We'll see.
But, like, thematically, not thematically, like, just the style of music just isn't as fun and interesting. I get that, like one of the reasons they stopped was for like mental health reasons, and then they come back and talk about it in this album, which is something you should do. But like, I don't think you should necessarily lose some of the kind of edge that you had before.
Right.
I think every single album I listened to before, I had a song like stuck in my head afterwards for good or worse. I always walked away feeling like something's implanted in my brain.
Right.
And this time, nothing stuck with me. It just felt like they got old and a bit boring. I like some of it. It just wasn't. It wasn't as good as I've experienced them in the past.
Okay.
Yeah. Was there any standout tracks or anything like that?
I feel which I liked Across the Border, and because I thought that was a bit different in a good way. Like, they always had some of the more like spoken word tracks, and so that having one of those was cool. And Listen Little Man I liked as well. But yeah, broadly, it felt like a pale comparison to their previous sales.
Okay. Fran, give us your thoughts.
Well, this is interesting straight away because I knew Matt was a fan, and I didn't really know them at all before this. I knew the cover of Hounds of Love, the Kate Bush song, and I absolutely despised it. So when I heard that, I was like...
You're a huge Kate Bush fan, isn't it? Because you were defending her.
I'm not really a Kate Bush fan. But,
no, I thought you didn't like her at all.
They managed to make a song that I didn't like that much totally intolerable. So... after hearing that, I thought I'm never going to listen to Futureheads. So when Matt picked these, I was a little bit pissed off, to be honest. I was hoping he'd pick something better. But this album really took me by surprise. Like, I actually really enjoyed it. I think the main reason I enjoyed it is it reminded me a lot of Maximo Park. So yeah, maybe it's a bit derivative of that, but I still got a lot from it. It kind of reminded me of them both musically and lyrically, and also politically to a degree. I kind of particularly enjoyed some of the politically engaged stuff on the album. The tracks Good Night Out and Animus both seem to take a bit of a swipe at those of us living in the liberal bubble, and I think they pulled that off pretty well. I enjoyed that song. Listen Little Man, which Matt just mentioned, seemed to be taking a real dig at those Brexit voters who cling on to the idea of empire. It was kind of I like the tone they took with that song, that sort of, when did we all become so small, which I thought I very much took as a look at our current political climate. And okay, it's no Kate Tempest or Nadine Shah in that respect, but it's decent. And then I quite enjoyed some of the fun songs like Electric Shock. And yeah, Mortals, the final song, is highly irritating. It's horrible. They just keep repeating the same words, and that took me back to that Hounds of Love cover. But other than that, I was really pleasantly surprised by this album. I really didn't expect to like it at all, and I did. So yeah, that was me.
Okay. I have a bit of a difficult situation with this one because it's difficult for me to talk about it without talking about another one on the playlist.
Okay.
I think I'm going to have to go ahead and do that to make my comments, which,
go for it.
Of all the playlists we've had, like maybe 20 or so of them, maybe 24. More than 20, 24, okay, thank you. I've never seen a situation where two albums were right next to each other and so comparable, so much sort of in competition for the same sort of space, musical space, as the Futureheads, and then directly after them on our playlist, the Murder Capital.
Yeah.
So, to be fair, on the Futureheads, I think they had some summery sort of tone, like on songs like Good Night Out, I think it's called.
Yeah, Good Night Out.
Some sort of fun tone in that. They had some Maximo Park references. I see what Fran's saying there. And those are, that's a great band to try and be like. I absolutely love Maximo Park. They are, however, far inferior to Maximo Park. Anything, in terms of this album at least. I don't know the other stuff they've done.
Yeah.
So yeah, but mostly they stood in a very poor light compared to Murder Capital, who are also an aggressive punk type pop punk band. A little different, but a lot of overlap. We'll talk more about Murder Capital in a minute, I guess. It made me feel, yeah, exactly, and it made me feel that Futureheads didn't really have a chance, honestly, compared to that other album. So I think I'm trying to take it out of the context in which the playlist created for me, and say that it was okay, but it didn't really move me, and that was a lot of the reason was because of the other parts of the playlist. So
okay.
So that's it for Futureheads for me. It's a fairly brief comment, but that's to be honest, that's where I stood with it. So another question then, Fran, which album had your favourite track from this list, and was it on your favourite album?
Well, you'll get to speak about the Murder Capital straight after Futureheads, because my favourite track on this list was definitely Green and Blue by the Murder Capital. I've been totally obsessed with this song for the last month. To start with, it was like largely the jagged guitars, the drum beat, and like the earworm of the chorus that dragged me into it. But since you asked this question, Nick, I've looked into this song a little bit and read about it more, and I've fallen even more in love with it. So it was apparently written in response to one of their friends' suicides. And once I knew that, the kind of mystical lyrics around the correlate the green, the blue for you, that the chorus says, that didn't make a lot of sense to me at first, but reading more into it, I think it's all about trying to like repair a connection that can't really be repaired, and the lyrics throughout it do start to make a lot of sense when you know the context. So I just thought it was really, really impressive, and this song really blew me away. When it comes to the question of whether it's from my favourite album on the list, I think that in the end it is, although we'll come to one later that ran it really close for me. But yeah, I love the whole sound of this album. I get what Nick's saying there about the Futureheads and this coming next to each other, because I did, usually when I set the playlist up, I try and space out the ones that might be a bit similar, and there was a similarity, but you're right, like the Futureheads doesn't come close to this. I love the whole sound of this album. I mean, we often compare bands to Joy Division, but I think that's totally unavoidable here. I think the drums, the bass, the wail of the voice, the poetry of lyrics, it's very Joy Division. Slow Dance 1, which is, I think, the fourth song on the album, is so Joy Division. It pretty much is Joy Division. But before one of you makes the comment that it's derivative, I don't really agree. I think it's heavily influenced by Joy Division and some other bands that maybe get mentioned in a bit, but they have a sound that's their own. And yeah, it's not really worth me listing all the songs I liked because there isn't a low point on this album for me. So I'd be going for a long time. But what I really liked about it as well, which was another Joy Division type thing, was the contrast of the really raucous tracks, like the opening two, which is For Everything and More Is Less. And then the more brooding ones, like How the Streets Adore Me Now and On Twisted Ground. So yeah, all in all, I absolutely love this album. Brilliant.
Matt, jump in. What do you think?
I'd start off with the whole Futureheads comparison. I agree that it kind of Futureheads paled in comparison. I don't think the Futureheads should be trying to do this kind of music. They should be shinier, and that's why their comparison is so stark.
And they were a bit shinier, weren't they? To be fair, I think I'm the one who drew the comparison, but I do see there is a little difference in the way they're trying to be a bit more, slightly more pop, aren't they?
Yeah, Murder Capital. I like this album, but I do think it was a bit uneven. Like this style of music generally really appeals to me. Anything post-punk or post-punk revival, and for some reason most of it, like, I felt good about, but it didn't quite click to be like the album for me. I think to me it felt like it felt super energetic and vital, but also it felt like the album. I know you were trying to head off the whole derivative thing. It didn't feel derivative
So
from Joy
defensive,
Division.
isn't he?
Like, it felt it's definitely felt like a step removed from Joy Division. To me, it felt derivative more of post-punk, like the revival of the 2000s and stuff. It felt very like a lot of the bands, like say Interpol and things like that, where they're taking their influences not necessarily directly, but also from Joy. Some of the tracks are undeniably.
Yeah, and those bands, Interpol, I mean, when I first started listening to Interpol, it was obviously I would be saying the same thing about the Joy Division comparison, so I can get that.
It just felt like two steps down the line, and at this point we had such a big revival, like 10 years ago. It just felt like, oh, we're doing this again.
But I do feel like we are doing it again, and I feel like this type of music's in a really good place at the minute.
I agree.
There's loads of really good sort of post-punk coming out in the last couple of years, and it's quite exciting for me. I think maybe I liked Interpol, but I didn't really get into the revival as much in that time as you. I know you did. So maybe that's...
But they were... I feel like they were American bands, right? And it's always better when they're local.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree that the music scene's a super good place. Like, but I'd rather go and listen to something like Fontaines DC, right? Or go and listen to Girls than listen to this.
It's a tough one. I think I prefer this to Fontaines DC as much as I love Fontaines DC. I think
that's a big statement.
I think
this
it's
year.
more consistent.
Yeah, from you.
I think it's more consistent. I think it's I think I do. I think I need to give it some time till I can totally commit to that sentence. But yeah, there's no song on Fontaines that I love as much as I love Green and Blue. I'll say that.
Right.
Okay.
Right. You done, Matt? Yeah, you covered it.
Yeah. What do you reckon?
So I'll just pick up on the derivative stuff. Actually, and again, Fran is just totally paranoid. I wasn't going to say they were that derivative of anything really, but I would say that the Joy Division reference, I see it, and I don't think they're as tightly. I mean, Joy Division are actually a pop band on a certain level, because they write like 4-minute songs, verse, chorus songs, like bridge, verse, chorus, So that's something that this band are a lot more willing to do, things that are lengthier, kind of evolve a bit more, I feel like. But anyway, that's by the by. Basically, if I start with the negatives from my point of view, I think the album errs towards the melodramatic at times. There are
Have
some
you seen him
moments.
perform live?
I haven't, no.
Yeah, you might think that even more when you see him perform live.
Well, I am going to go and see him perform live, actually. Yeah, this guy and I got a ticket for.
What?
Yeah, you're not
Can
going.
I have it, please? Because it's sold out.
Oh no, this guy I know from a friend of my son's friend's.
Right, I'm not
parent.
talking for the rest of this podcast now.
That's going to be a bonus for all of us then. Yeah, so no, it is a bit melodramatic at times, and that can be slightly off-putting. But in general, that's a very small criticism. I love the tone of this, the pacing, the kind of darkness of it overall. The times they're willing to sort of build an idea over time, like with some of the longer songs. Like, I personally would have picked out "On Twisted Ground" as my favourite song, which is over 6 minutes, isn't it? So they've got the Green and Blues also over 6 minutes, I noticed. Yeah, so they've got some good like time to sort of let the songs breathe, which I think is great. In terms of influences, actually, I would have picked out two other bands than Interpol or Joy Division or any of those, which is New Model Army. I think they sound a lot like New Model Army.
I don't know them.
Okay, so they're like Levelers though.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they were just in that same school. They're older than Levelers, but doing the same kind of stuff.
Okay. I know the name.
Slightly heavier than Levelers, but that kind of thing. And there's a band from the 90s as well that I sound a hell of a lot like called Smash. Who only did, I think, one album, but I used to be really into it. It's crazily fast and energetic, but the vocals sound very similar. I actually was wondering if it was the same vocalist, but honestly, it's too long ago that album came out. He's probably a pensioner by now.
In his early 20s, so
exactly, yeah.
Unless he was like
Don't think that's
a baby
gonna work.
when he did Smash album.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just old, all right? We get that point through every single time. So, no, I really loved it. I really loved it. I thought it was, apart from this minor thing about it sometimes being slightly overblown, I thought it was, I love Slow Dance too.
Yeah.
I love Twisted Ground, as I said. Green and Blue's great. So yeah, it's very consistently engaging and an exciting kind of listen, you know. So yeah, it was really thrilling. And Fontaine's DC Association is, I probably would lean towards this band over them, but they're great as well.
Well, the interesting thing as well is they both came to my attention because they supported Idols. So Idols have kind of bought both these bands out, and Idols,
Nice.
you know, they've supported, and then the Idols supporters have got behind these bands as well. So I think that's where Idols have started this revival, and it's bringing some fascinating bands through, I think. So yeah, it's a good time.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we've got 3 left of the main list. Who wants to talk about their favourite of those remaining 3? How about Matt? Why don't you go for that? You've got 3 left to choose from.
My favourite of the 3 is probably the Springsteen album.
Oh,
okay. All right, let's talk about the classic then. Yeah, that sounds good.
I don't. Yeah, I don't really know Bruce Springsteen that well.
Okay.
I heard come up some of his bigger tracks, and a couple of them are on this album. But for me, this was like dictionary definition stadium rock. It felt big. There was like a lot going on instrumentation wise. There's a lot of different sounds coming from all over the place. But despite this like really big sound, I was quite impressed that it still sounded gritty in parts. I think it felt like it was sometimes getting close to the edge of crossing over into something being really, really cheesy, which for that era, there is a lot of kind of the cheesier side of stadium rock. But I think it didn't actually cross that line. I think a lot of the time it just trod that line finally.
your line's in a very different place to my line, Matt.
Giving everything away there.
But yeah, I think that the slower stuff is generally less interesting on the album, but that's often the case for my taste anyway. But yeah, I think it's really interesting to listen to someone he has like a huge amount of talent. He can definitely rock out, but he can definitely make these big, widely appealing, big songs that aren't necessarily him just like twerking around on his guitar.
Twerking?
Okay, and I quite
that now.
Thanks for that mental picture.
Yeah. And I actually quite like his voice, like the drawl that he has. I think it's distinctive and interesting, and yeah, kind of the whole album, it isn't necessarily something that I'm gonna rush away and buy all of his stuff, but I'm also not gonna be like, I can't listen to this, which I was kind of expecting, if I'm to be honest.
Right.
So if more than anything, it was a nice surprise.
Okay. That's not massive praise, but I suppose it's acceptable for a favourite album of the remaining three. I'll go in it. I think I really have, for many reasons, wanted to like this album a lot. I really felt like there were reasons why. I saw, for example, the documentary about Darkness on the Edge of Town that they made like a few years ago. I was watching in America at the time on HBO, which is like all this footage of him in the studio, like conceiving of all these complicated instrumentation ideas and stuff, which I always find fascinating. I also know so many bands are so influenced. We were listening on the way over here, Fran and I, to Titus Andronicus' The Monitor, which is like an homage to a lot of Bruce Springsteen stuff. And is really fascinating album, and what that is definitely worth checking out. Unfortunately, I just couldn't get it to stick somehow. I couldn't get into it in a way that seemed emotionally connecting to me. And I think really the answer to that confusion is really that stadium rock is always going to be problematic in terms of anyone getting an emotional connection, a personal emotional connection. Maybe that's, people could dispute, the three of you could dispute that on certain cases, but in general, watching something that's, or certainly recorded, to sound like it's ready for a massive audience of 50,000 or something is immediately off-putting to me, and that's really, really hard to struggle to fight with, really. An example of that from a production standpoint is how the pianos are handled in this album. I don't seem to know that piano is like not a digital instrument. I mean, you can actually play a piano softly and notes come out of it more softly. I mean, is that not obvious? They literally bang on the fucking piano like you would not believe, every single note. Like they're just playing their heart out, as I'm sure they would argue. The band, not just Bruce, of course, the band, his band. But to me, it's just not dynamic enough to be engaging. It just seems like they're always turning up to 11 and just putting their heart and soul into it. I suppose some people would think that was an upside, but I want a bit more dynamics, I want a bit more range in the music, and that's how I can connect to it. And at this point, I have found I couldn't do so. So yeah, very, very frustrating, really. I've really wanted to, but I just couldn't get into it. Fran, what'd you rate?
Well, my first bullet point was just, fuck me, Badlands is horrible.
Wow, that's such a subtle critique.
Yeah. I'm going to have to do a little bit like Nick did here and give a little bit away about my feelings of one of the other albums. But after Rapsody, which I was a fan of, Badlands just killed it for me every time. I was just like, oh, God. Come on, and I'd just be like... And it really struggled. It was a real struggle for me to even try and get into the album after that. But... the album doesn't recover from that for me. I mean, Badlands is just the worst song. But yeah, I wanted, a bit like what Nick's just said, I wanted to be surprised by this. Because Springsteen's one of them that I know people who love him. I've always been quite intrigued by him as a character. His sort of politics are good. I've heard a couple of songs that I like, but everything that I thought I wouldn't like about Springsteen, it turns out I was right. Like, it's very macho. It's very bombastic. It's totally over the top. There's a whole ballad about racing cars, for fuck's sake. I mean, it's just horrible. And then Factory rescues the album very, very slightly because it shows off his politics. It's not totally macho. It shows a bit of emotion, but it's not enough to make me ever want to listen to anything by him ever again. I'm done with Springsteen.
Wow.
Which is a shame.
Did anyone see that film that was out about, I did, with Jill, my wife, the film about the guy who's obsessed with Bruce Springsteen, the kid?
No.
Okay. I can't remember what it's called now.
I heard about it.
Yeah, it's like a musical film about a guy from Luton who's obsessed with Bruce Springsteen. And it was the same thing in that. Like the guy was so deeply invested in him emotionally. I just thought, wow, I wish I could. This guy's really worth something, and I just could not get past the original bombast.
But I think whenever a band gets a film made about them, about someone being really obsessed with the musical, it's usually terrible, isn't it? I mean, Queen have had one, Beatles have had one. I'm just slagging off all the big bands.
You are really, yeah. Wow.
It's just like, If you're actually a good band, you don't get a film made of you. Okay.
Well, you have to be
Scrap
edgy
Control,
and unappealing.
which is amazing, but that's more about him, isn't it? But
Or 24-hour party people.
Yeah, I was about to say that as well.
Yeah.
all right, there's 2, but I gave 3. I'm winning.
Made of stone.
That's not a film. It's a documentary. You can have a documentary made about you. I didn't say that.
That's very good of you. Very gracious. Thanks.
So yeah, Springsteen.
All right.
Yeah, he's not the one.
Okay. Springsteen is off Fran's list.
You
That
need
leaves
to
2
start
then.
on one, Nick.
I'll
You
start on
start
one.
on
Yeah.
one, yeah.
So I will go with Rapsody.
Okay.
Cool.
With the Eve album. I haven't got a ton to say about it, but I did like it overall. I felt like it was everything this year has been in the shadow of Little Sims, and it's not as good as Little Sims. That's very, very clear to me.
You can't
It's
just
not.
keep coming back to it. It's not
Because
as good as
Little Sims
though,
is
as if that's
incredible.
Like,
Little
so
Sims-
there's one album that you've loved this year, but it doesn't mean that it makes all other hip hop not as good. You
Well,
wouldn't say that about
it's
a rock
relative.
album. You wouldn't spend the whole year saying it's not as good as it's.
I would actually, because I spent that saying about idols for freaking ages.
Well,
So
you can't.
I'm not allowed.
No.
All right, it's vetoed. I won't say that then. I'll take it all back. I feel terrible now. Yeah, so I thought it had some interesting themes. She has a good flow. Some of the beats I felt let it down a bit, honestly. It was the music rather than the lyrics that let it down. The songs like Cleo, right near the start of the album, the beats are not very slick, not very cool. They're kind of awkward, and sampling Genesis is just, I just wrote down ouch. Basically, yeah. I mean, that's just painful.
I'll
That's
go into
really
what I
painful.
think about
Yeah,
that when I
we'll
get
do
to it,
when you
but
get your
yeah,
turn, but not
yeah,
now. So
yeah,
shut up. So yeah, it was the Genesis connection was not good, but no, it just typified a few of the sort of musical things behind the songs, which didn't really carry through as well as I'd hoped when I got into the album to start with. So, and I think it was. Fairly average opinion on it overall. Nothing too radical. I would possibly listen to it again, but it's not something I'm deeply invested in at all. So, and as Fran is so keen to talk and has so much to say, I'm going to go to Matt. What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, perfect. I actually feel in a similar way to you, Nick. I thought this album had potential. There were some good tracks on it. I'd actually say her flow was weirdly changeable. Like there were some songs where it was really smooth, and like in Whoopi, she's like really like bounces over the backing to the song really nicely. But then other tracks, it felt a bit more stilted, and like I think that's also maybe some of the beats as well. But it kind of killed some of the rhythm of the song. I think like Alia. I just didn't, and Cleo as well. Like apart from the Phil Collins aspect, which I also wrote down, I was just like, oh, what a way to start the album.
You know, like on the when I did the 2-pack playlist, there's like I think 2, maybe 3 songs that he samples Phil Collins on, and Biggie has as well on a song. Like
Brilliant.
it's not a rare thing in hip
Not a
hop.
good thing
But
either.
that was
I think
the
it's fine.
90s as well.
Yeah, yeah.
We've grown. We've realised.
Yeah, we've woken up now. Yeah.
But yeah, like some of the tracks are really great. The other thing that annoyed me was she used the auto-tune stuff in a really unimaginative way.
Okay.
I think we had the Kevin Abstract album, which I really liked, where he used I think the auto-tune in a super. I know you guys weren't digging it, but I thought he was very imaginative, and
He just
was
put
using
auto-tune
it.
on every single part of the album. What's imaginative about that?
No, but he was using it to help bend the way that the musicality of the song.
We could
It was
rehash
to
a conversation
extenuate
about an
this.
album from like 5 podcasts ago if you want, or we can continue talking about this one.
But like this just felt like it was like just in it. No reason, no rationale. It didn't move the song in any way.
Right.
But yeah, I like the fact she called out Kanye on his bullshit. That was good.
Yeah.
That was quite
She
nice.
calls out an awful lot of stuff on this album, which
Yeah.
I think is quite important. But anyway, carry on.
That's it, I think.
Are you done?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah,
Cool.
Whoopi, Oprah, best songs.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
and they're actually they're really good.
Okay.
So yeah,
Can I just ask before I start if either of you heard any of her previous stuff?
Nope.
no,
No. So I think you should both go and listen to the
Yeah.
last album, Layla's Wisdom.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know Kendrick's on it, and I believe it's Kendrick produced.
And is she not on Kendrick?
She's on some Kendrick.
Yeah.
And actually, I'll get to what the difference is in some of my comments, but it's a very different album to this, and I think you would both prefer it from your comments. But please do give it a listen, because the last album's fantastic.
There was definitely enough in this to make I was going to go and have a dig.
Yeah. Layla's Wisdom is it's more, you know what you were saying about the dated beats, kind of the older sounding beats, which I actually see as a positive, and I'll get to that in a minute. But Layla's Wisdom, the last album, isn't like that, so please check that album out, because I think you'll like it. But cool. Yeah, for me, this was the album that ran the Murder Capital closest for me. I only decided this morning which was my favourite of the two. Thematically, I think this album's perfection. I love the fact that it's a love letter to black women that she admires from the past and present, and how a lot of the time they're not the traditional choices that you get when people are having that kind of discussion. I love that the Aaliyah's included. I love that Afeni Shakur, Tupac's mum, is included. I think it's really clever. I love how this builds out to be a love letter to black America in general, and a scathing attack on the prejudice in the country at the minute. Cleo, which you both slagged off, is one of my favourite tracks. And also, I think it's such a strong example of what I'm talking about. I think the lyrics, what good is a black woman to them? Raped us in slavery, they're raping us again. Only put us on the TV if our titties jiggling. Just so powerful, and it's an example of how strong lyrically she is throughout it. And this whole album calls out so many parts of black culture and white culture and American culture, and I think she's really strong in that respect. It's another album for me where there's so many songs I love that I can't really mention them all, but yes, Matt, Oprah is a standout for me. And yeah, the Afeni Shakur song, which is the last song on the album, I think, uses a Tupac sample as the chorus. It's dedicated to his mum. It takes on a lot of what Tupac was about and what we spoke about when I did Tupac as my Why I Love. And he claimed, his feminist leanings and that side of him. He always claimed he learnt it from his mum. So it's really interesting that Rapsody dedicates this song to his mum. And I think I really love the way that song reaches out to like men in her community and asks some really powerful questions. Now, musically, what you guys have both said, I think there's a lot more old school feel to this album than any of their previous work. It's a very old school album in terms of the beats. But I think that really fits the theme and the nostalgia. And, yes, I can see why that could be problematic, but also I think for this album it really works. I love it. And for me, the last two albums have both been outstanding, and she's sort of top tier hip-hop going at the minute for me. I really, really, really have a lot of time for Rapsody.
Wow.
And definitely. I would say it's the first hip-hop album this year for me that rivals Little Sims.
Okay.
I'm not sure yet where I lean.
You're not allowed to talk about Little Sims in comparison to this album. That's unfair and unreasonable.
I'm only doing it because you brought it up. I'm not sure where I lean. I need more time with this one first, but I love it.
Okay.
And please do listen to Layla's Wisdom, both of you.
Will do.
Okay.
Absolutely. Okay, so that only leaves Lana Del Ray, Norman fucking Rockwell.
Okay.
That's the name of the album. So yeah, why doesn't Fran go first again?
All right.
Talk some more, Fran.
Well, I haven't got to moan much today apart from Bruce Springsteen, and I'm not going to moan now, really. Firstly, I think it's an exquisitely beautiful album at times. There's a really soulful sadness to her sound, and the album sounds like someone who's really sort of searching for something. I think it gets pretty deep. She's more of a storyteller than I thought she would be. Love Song, for example, is a great little set piece about a car journey with someone you're in a relationship with but are growing distant from. Marina's apartment complex is similarly strong lyrically, tells another story about a different phase of what I think is the same relationship. I think it's one of the strongest songs here. All in all, I think the album's like lyrically sprawling, but musically it's really minimal, and I think the album both starts and ends really well. The songs I've mentioned so far are all pretty near the start, and then it ends with happiness is a butterfly and hope is a dangerous thing for a woman like me to have. And I think they're two of the other really strong songs that both sort of sum up the album's theme of sort of a kind of fucked up love story. So yeah, as a first experience of Lana Del Ray for me, I was impressed, and a lot more so than I thought I would be. But that said, I do think it's too long. I think we could easily lose 4 songs here and we'd have a better album. And Venice Bitch I was really enjoying, for the first 3 minutes, but she ruins it by having 6 minutes of meandering and whooping and making weird noises. So that's a shame because that's a good song to start with. And my final point really is that as much as I did like it, I'm a bit thrown by how acclaimed she is above other artists who I think are doing similar things and sometimes better things. I think Phoebe Bridgers, who I'm a big fan of, is one that springs to mind. And there's some songs on this that sound like Daughter. And I think I don't know of her albums. I heard she's changed a lot throughout her career, so maybe that's why. But for this album, I think it's good. I was really impressed. But then there's other things by other people that are better that haven't had the same acclaim, so that throws me a little bit. But yeah, that's where I landed.
Right, I think we'll go to Matt then. I'll finish that conversation off. Go for it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think she has evolved a little bit. I haven't been keeping like tabs on her music super closely, but I did. I remember listening when her first video games came out and it became a sensation. I listened to a couple of her albums since, and this one it's an interesting evolution where she's taken a little bit of a step away from the poppier aspects of her music. I find the album quite transportive. For me, it's the perfect album for listening on like my commute because it just takes me out of the subway car I'm in and puts me somewhere else. But when I'm not listening in an environment that's conducive to that, I found it hard to engage with because it is so like mid-tempo. It is so kind of monotone all the way through. And it's kind of the dreamy melancholy that is kind of her signature. Just sometimes it's hard to resonate with.
And I think that's kind of rings a bell with what I was saying about there been too many songs, because I think if it was like a few songs shorter, that wouldn't be quite such a problem, would it? But I think you're right. Most of the time when I listen to this, I was travelling, and a lot of the songs are about travelling, which probably helps that.
Yeah,
but,
for sure. It is a travel, like it's definitely an album with that vibe. I think. But yeah, I actually quite liked the 10-minute track Venice Bitch. I think for someone who's considered to be like on the poppier end of this kind of whatever genre this is,
that's a good question, isn't it?
Yeah, like I think when she first came out, like she got a really hard time because she has a persona and she's a pop artist and and so seeing her actually kind of flex her musical muscle a bit more and doing something that she wants to do that's a bit different it's cool. But yeah, it is a very long track, and the album is a very long album.
Yeah.
For something that doesn't have too many peaks and valleys. So for me, I wasn't 100% sold. Plus, I don't like the cover. Doing Time is bad. But yeah.
Doing Time, Sublime song, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was one that I would have taken out.
Weird.
I know what songs I would take out, but it's that is one of them. But what I did like, and something I didn't mention then, was like the start of the album. I think, again, with me not really knowing her, like the opening lines being something along the lines of something about a man-child.
Goddamn man-child, you fucked me so good, you nearly made me say I love you. Or something
I thought like it kind of took me by surprise that I was expecting her to be a bit more gentle and I think that's quite a nice way to start an album.
Yeah. Okay.
Go for it, Nick.
So Matt, in a typical move, has said there aren't too many peaks and troughs, which I thought was is a good positive spin on this album, because I find another word used was monotone, which I think is a more fair representation. It's very, very. And you talked about dreamy, the two of you, how you like to listen to it when you want to be transported into a place that's like serene. And it is very lush. I definitely see that, very kind of warm. But it's very flat as well, I felt like. I mean, not lyrically now, just musically. It was very kind of sickly sweet, I suppose is the word I would use. Just kind of like all evenly kind of polished and shiny and lush. And that's something that I couldn't really get past for a lot of the time.
Did you find that the sort of lyrical content counteracted that at all?
Yeah, it did. And I see what you're saying about that. And there was like this sense that she was saying things that were kind of, I mean, shocking is overstating it, but saying things that were kind of a bit more gritty than just the sweet love songs, you know. And especially, and that's interesting, I suppose, in offsetting like this grand piano ballads, you know, that all the way through it, you know. But I suppose, and I also definitely had the sense that Venice Bitch which is probably glancing at it, it's more than twice the length of any other song, or a bit more than twice the length of any other song, was really lost its focus completely, really. But in general, though,
because it's one of the best songs and it starts, and I love
I
love the line around. I'm your Venice bitch. I think she delivers that really well, but then she just whoops for 6 minutes.
So I have really mixed feelings, honestly. I think it was fairly clever, but it wasn't something that excited me. I would describe it as unsurprising a lot of the time. Not lyrically, again, I think the lyrics did offset things a little bit, but in general, musically, it was a little bit flat. And maybe that's the persona that she's kind of that Matt referred to, that she's kind of nurtured over the years. I haven't really followed her music, but you sort of hear about her persona a lot in popular culture, and I've always found it to be a bit kind of similarly not very interesting, really. So no, I didn't love it. I thought it was okay. I wouldn't rule out listening to something else of hers in the future. I don't think she's kind of disqualified herself from that at all in my mind. But I would like to see something with a few more peaks and troughs, as Matt would say.
Yeah, and I think maybe from what I've read and heard, that like some of her previous stuff was more hip hop influenced and more different. Yeah. So I think maybe there is some of that in. But I do think it was one note to a degree, but I think that's why I think if it was a 10 song album, that maybe wouldn't get as draining as it does. But with it being is it 14, 16? It does get too long. But I think you wouldn't. Well, I don't know if you wouldn't feel that effect as much personally, Nick. But I think people maybe wouldn't feel that effect as much if it was shorter. Yeah,
I can see that. I mean, I can see that. Although it doesn't. If it's one note consistent, if it's very consistent all the way through, then it needs to have some changes. But I think you're right. There's a little bit too much going on in terms of length of it and the number of times she revisits these topics and stuff. So yeah. Anyway, so okay. Yeah, I didn't hate it, but nothing I was really that moved by. Yeah. Okay, so that covers all the main ones. I was going to talk then a little bit about FKA Twigs' EP Melissa, and I'll sort of introduce it and then get what your thoughts are on it. So, as far as I'm concerned, in a simple summary, Melissa is a totally incendiary EP. I came to it through LP1 and LP1's shortlisting for the Mercury, and as usual, I don't do a ton of research about things I get into, honestly. Sometimes I am lazy, and sometimes I actually consciously don't want to kind of affect things by those kind of issues and stuff. But so I'm going to talk mostly in technical terms or in sort of specific terms about this specific EP. It's only 5 tracks. Probably must be the shortest playlist we've done on the Wire Love stuff. But it's so packed with ideas. It's so densely woven. That I find that absolutely unbelievable that she's managed to create this big of a canvas of ideas across such a short piece of music. So it's the best thing she's done, I think, in terms of both the production and the song construction. And I say production, using those two phrases. I say production because it's just about the most intentional set of songs I've ever heard. In other words, every tiny nuance of the sound of this EP was intentional, was not just fallen into, was not just a force of habit or, let's try this. It was really thought out in an incredibly clever way, I think. And I say, when I said earlier song construction rather than songwriting, I really mean that, because I think this is one of the best examples I've ever heard of something called the concept of the studio as an instrument. I don't know if are you both familiar with that term?
No, I've not heard that term.
Because some years ago I used to try and be a studio engineer, and in that time there was a lot of discussion about this concept of studio as an instrument, which was not building songs and then taking them to the recording studio to try and replicate the song you had live, but using the studio as a tool to construct things from nothing. So basically to build songs, not just synth sounds, but generally build things out of processing and effects and kind of odd shapes, which the studio could allow you to do in ways that weren't real, So I think this is one of the best examples and one of her most fascinating traits is how much she does this. You know, you really can't tell, I don't think, in any of these 5 songs where the song was before it was recorded. It's a bit like the song. The mental picture I have is that the song was written like a table laid out, and then the rug, and then the tablecloth is pulled from underneath it. You know, like, and you don't understand how the bits that are left stand sometimes. You know, how do they actually constitute a song? How if she was sat there, and I think I know the answer to this, but if I was to say play one of the songs off this album, and you know, try and ask her how to do that with a guitar in her hand or something, I don't think there's any way she could do so. You know, if you like songs like Mother Creep, particularly, which is probably my favourite song and the last one on the EP, are just built out of these really bizarre pieces that you don't understand where they came from. So the songs, as a result of all that, they kind of jut out at weird angles. They burst into kind of momentary fury or rage just for a few seconds, and then they move away from that again. You suddenly discover they've lost momentum or drive, and they sort of drift away just when they're about to have a crescendo, which I think is just fascinating. It's so fresh. It's just such a riveting experience to go through a song where you have no idea what the next turn, on first listen, what the next turn will be. So yeah, the songs sound, sometimes they sound massive, sometimes they're sort of tiny, and all the songs sit under this angelic vocal of Twigs herself, which move themselves in odd ways as well, between romance and then sex, peace, violence, anger, love. I mean, it's just a constant struggle of different forces, just like it is musically, which I think works really, really well. So altogether, the whole EP is really full of fascinating contradictions. I think that's what I would say overall. But I want to make a big statement at the end of this about the EP, which is this is very much not just Twigs' work. This is the work of, like LP1 was, this is the work of Twigs and her producer, Arca, who has done a number of albums of his own. And if you are wondering how much the influence of somebody like Arca can have on a product, on a kind of musical product at the end, I recommend, and I did ask the two of you to do this, you listen to the newest single before the album comes out in a few weeks, Holy Terrain, which he was not involved with. And I don't think he was involved with anything off the new album, in point of fact. And I have to say, I find Holy Terrain to be very, very average, like a very average sort of R&B / hip-hop song, with thematically and song construction-wise predictable, and that's something I could never say about a joint Twigs Arca production. So I just want to make clear that although I absolutely love FKA Twigs' stuff, it's the two of them that's really driven home that point to me and made me kind of really obsessed with their music, not just her music. So I really, really hope the album will be great. I just want to say the album that's coming out very shortly. I'm really excited about it. And the Cellophane single, the other one that came out, was better than Holy Terrain, although again not as weird as a lot of the stuff that Arca has been involved with. But I suppose I finished off by saying either way, I suppose we'll still have Melissa. Melissa is still a remarkable achievement and something that totally blows me away still. I still find new shapes and figures in it all the way through. So yeah, that's what I want to say. So what are both your thoughts? Who wants to go first? Fran?
Yeah, a lot of what you've said is really interesting because it took me some time to get into this.
You hated it, basically, is what you
said. No. It took me some time to get into it. And I think a lot of what you've just said around the sort of, the contradictions within it and it sort of jutting out from all over the place, which, in some ways reminded me of some of Bjork's music.
Yeah. And Arca's worked with Bjork as well, by the way, a lot.
Oh, cool. And I think, so it took me quite a lot of time. In the end, I loved more of it than I didn't love, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think it took time because, the production is interesting, and what you said about Arca is interesting, but I think for me it's the enigma around the meanings of some of the songs, the meanings of what she's singing about. I read an interesting thing about I'm Your Doll, which talks about how she originally wrote that song when she was much younger, and as she got older and bought it for this EP, she changed a lot of it because it was very much a submissive song when she was younger, and she turned it into a bit of a, it tangles with that submissive element, but then it fights against it a little bit as well. So I thought that was really interesting. So it takes a while to get to the more feminist messages behind some of her songs. But even though I've just talked about Amanda Doll for a little bit, for me that was my least favourite of the 5 probably.
Probably mine as well, to be fair. But yeah.
In Time and Glass and Patron, I absolutely love. In Time's the one. What's the repeated refrain? You've got a goddamn nerve.
Yeah.
Every time she delivers that, it's really powerful. Sort of Shivers type power.
Yeah.
Glass and Patron is interesting, and what you talked about I think why it took me a long time to get into this song is because what you talked about songs being surprising, and the first few times I listened to it, I thought it was my phone ringing because it kind of rings and then it stops and then it seems to have gone and then it rings and I thought, fuck, what's going on?
The timings are so weird
So
as well.
it took me quite a bit of time to figure out that wasn't a ringtone. And when I got past that was probably my actual favourite song. I think it's incredible. So yeah, but there's still, I think maybe the nature of having an EP as what you've introduced the band with has left me with a bit of a thing. I'm not entirely sure about FKA Twigs yet. I really enjoyed some of it. Two of the songs, the first 2 songs actually, I wasn't as into as I was the last 3. So I haven't made a full decision on her. And then what's interesting is I thought you were getting us to look at Holy Terrain because you really liked it, and actually no, I don't really like Holy Terrain.
Yeah, I don't either.
I couldn't really get into it. I think the video's great, but the song itself, I think I'm not really into. So I thought maybe if you were going to say that was another example of how amazing she is, I was going to have to argue with you.
Yeah, I know.
But I do agree with you. So we'll see. I need to listen to more.
Well, don't listen to the new stuff yet. Listen to LP1.
Listen to LP1.
Yeah.
See what you think of that.
Listen to LP1.
The EP really, really grew on me over the month. And even now, still, when I'm listening to it, like I listened to it last night as I was walking to the shop, and I liked it again more than I did the previous time I liked it. So I think it's still growing on me. So I think I'll spend some more time with this.
It's funny you say about those particular tracks, because to me it's the first one, Figure 8, and the last one, Mother Creep, they're the strongest tracks altogether. In terms of song construction, they're just so bizarre, and they have such furious moments.
I love Mother Creep.
Out of nowhere. The way Mother Creep warms up and sort of rises out of nothing is just so stunning, beautiful.
But yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's the other 2 that you just didn't mention that I'd love to say. So Matt.
Okay, Matt, what'd you rate?
I already loved FKA Twigs, so it was really nice to just spend some time like exclusively listening to this, because I've kind of gone through LP1 a lot, and I haven't spent as much time with this. So
do you think which one do you think is better of the 2 out of interest?
I
know LP1's a lot more expansive.
Well, I think the issue comes down to the length of the format. This is just a bit too short.
Okay.
I think it is a problem sometimes, isn't it? Because you'll put an album on to listen to an album, and then how often do you put an EP on? Because you want to listen to music for a while when you put music on sometimes, don't you? So that can be a block, even though it's...
it's called repeat, people.
Yeah, it doesn't affect the quality of the song, but it is, I think an EP can... It always feels like a trailer to me, an EP.
Yeah.
This didn't, because I don't know, but you know what I mean? It's kind of always like you're warming up for something rather than...
Right. Sorry, Matt, I think over you. Go ahead.
No. I think there's actually one aspect that lends itself to this is, one thing you didn't talk about her is she's probably one of the most visually striking artists out there. Yeah. I think every video that comes out is amazing, pretty much. She has I wouldn't be surprised if when she's conceiving some of these songs, she's thinking about the visual imagery to go alongside them as well.
I know for the Cellophane single that came out, which I know is not on this EP, apparently Jill follows her on Instagram, and she's had like a year's worth of training in this particular dance stuff to get this video down. She was training daily for a year to prepare for it. So it's crazy.
Her dancing is insane.
She was a professional dancer, just for everyone who people don't know, before she was a singer.
Yeah, she's so talented, and then this EP has a whole visual aspect where you can just watch 20 minutes of
Have you seen that footage, Fran?
video.
No. Okay,
with,
there's a long video
with
piece
the
for it
music.
as
Might have helped tell me about that.
No, I actually didn't want to confuse things, I have to
Okay.
say. I deliberately didn't want to confuse things. I see what Matt's saying, but I think there's a lot to hear anyway. So there's an even more data if you do a video too.
Yeah, I was going to say, after listening to this, you should go and, because it just informs the music even more, I think. And I was really, I found it really interesting that I was wondering what point you were trying to make with the new song, because I felt exactly the same.
I kept that cryptic.
I think that she, in her older stuff, doesn't really have any contemporaries. Like, the closest thing of like modern artist that comes to her is maybe Grimes, and Grimes is very poppy, and not as inventive.
Yeah.
But the new track just sounds like it sounds like she's just like everyone else now.
Yeah.
Like,
it's very sad. We'll see though. Maybe the album will be a lot better.
Yeah, maybe.
The hope is that it's a single and she's releasing a single to try and get things in, and then they pull people in.
But it's not even that interesting. Like, there's the song itself. I think the hook with like the kind of muffled singing is cool, but like the rest of the song isn't that.
There's nothing to it. I agree with you.
Yeah,
I was very disappointed.
Yeah, not even in like a poppy aspect or an R&B. Like, it's not even catchy.
Yeah.
And she just drops this kind of almost alien-like persona that she has, which it sucks. But I was
not moving on from the sucks part though. Let's talk about the good stuff. Yeah. No, I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying.
She's fantastic. She is. Yeah. I hope she keeps making weird, cool music.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh.
All right. Well, that was mostly in unison about it.
Yeah.
Just about. Yeah. So great. Well, that covers it. I think we'll just say what's coming up next time. So I didn't get to say that last episode. If people were wondering why there was a missing episode, we recorded a whole episode with our fantastic guest Tom Burrows, and unfortunately, technical problems meant it was basically not recorded properly, and we couldn't use it what we had. So
fingers crossed that's not happened
Fingers crossed it's not happened today. And also, thanks for that. Thanks for stressing me out any more than I already was. And also, Tom will be coming back for the next episode to make up for the missed one we already did, unfortunately. So Tom's back with 3 picks. His pick for the new album is African Giant, Burna Boy. His classic is Silver Jews, American Water. He's doing a Why I Love playlist about St. Vincent. I will be picking JPEG Mafia's All My Heroes Are Cornballs. Fran?
I'm going with One True Pairing. It's a self-titled album by one of the members of Wild Beasts.
And Matt has the most ridiculously named album.
Yeah, I'm going with the band Microwave, with the album Death is a Warm Blanket.
I can't believe there's not been another band thought of the word microwave to use for their band in the last 30 years. That seems weird to me.
There is another band called Microwaves. So it took me a hot sec to find them.
All right, so those will be our 6 for next time. We'll welcome Tom back at that point. Please check out pickybs.com for all the reviews and all the other podcasts.
Yeah.
And also follow us on Twitter, which is
at Picky Bastards, capital P, capital B.
And then also on Facebook
is at The Picky Bastards.
Okay.
But we aren't the bluegrass band that are also called Picky Bastards that some people have been tagging us to.
Are you sure?
Yes, we are not a bluegrass band.
The 3 of us do that on the weekend. Yeah, play bluegrass bands.
We are not a bluegrass band.
No, not surprising really, is it, given our taste. All right then. Thanks very much. See you next time.
See you next time.
Cheers.